Hey, it's Cairo. Today is log number 5, and today I'll be discussing what we talk about during our live lectures and what intrigued me and what I really enjoyed. Um, so, what we talked about that I found really interesting was that Wall is against the idea of spectators and like there's no real connection to the working class. That was interesting to me because to me theater is all about the spectators and all about the audience and the people watching, and he's against the idea of spectators, and that's interesting. That's interesting. Um, and then a question that was asked was, why do a play when you want to change the world? So it was basically trying, like, if you want to change the world, then why do a play? No, that's interesting because you do hear actors and actresses saying, "I want to change the world," and they're doing it through theater and through plays and through movies. And it's true. How do they change the world through theater? I guess that we, as as a spectator watching a play, you do try to understand the concept of the play and try to change it to your reality, and you take things from the play, or even when you watch a movie afterwards you kind of analyze it and kind of think about it in your reality. So I don't know, in my opinion, a play can change the world. A play can change the world if it's a play with a meaning about life. It can, I think it can change the world, especially if it becomes a famous play. I think that spectators that watch plays kind of analyze them afterwards and think about it. So I think it can. And this was an interesting story about how, like, we were talking about theater of the oppressed and everything, and how that's really interesting. And we talked about how a woman in the audience wanted the wife to tell wanted the wife to tell the man off, and so they tried to perform that for her, but she was like, no, let me do it, and she went on the stage and beat the man. That is, and apparently what Sky told us was that it was well performed, and the fact that she did it herself and other people couldn't perform what she wanted in her head for her, she had to go up there and do it herself, was interesting to me. Really interesting to me. Because sometimes you can't write things or say things that you want other people to do. You need to go up there and do it yourself, which is which I think is true. I know, it makes me wonder, like, playwriters must deal with that a lot when they have certain image in their head and then they hand a script and then it's not exactly what was in their head. I don't know. That's kind of what I was thinking about when that happened, when we talked about that. And then another thing that was interesting is the difference between guerrilla theater and invisible theater. Guerrilla theater is doing it in a public area, and invisible theater is welcoming strangers and random people to the public area. That is interesting to me, that strangers would be interested in joining like a live action like that. So it's interesting. And then we talked about oppressing ourselves and how we have cops, and like we have cops in our own head, and we talked about a few of them. I wrote a few of cops that I think I personally have, and I think one of my cops is probably, I don't know if this would necessarily be one, but probably procrastination, um, and perfectionist. And we talked about that in our discussion rooms too, is that a few of them are like being a perfectionist or self doubt. It's interesting. Then we talked about whether we are still rebels or not, and rebellion. And one of the examples we came up with was what in our society is women not having children, and how that might be a rebellion because it's kind of known that woman needs to have a child, and if she doesn't have one, then maybe she's a rebel to society. And then we talked about rebellion during the whole pandemic right now, and how there's anti-maskers and people. And what I think is interesting is that people are scared nowadays to rebel because society is so strict, and we all have these routines that we follow daily, and we follow the law, and I don't know, we follow all these rules for like a perfect society in a sense. And yeah. Oh, I guess we're out of time. I have so much more I want to talk about, but I guess it's out of time. Thank you so much for listening.